Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Welcome to Module 12. In this module, we will look into some alternative models of land use transportation. So, we have discussed the 4-stage model. So, this is one approach, whereas in this particular module, we will look into activity based modeling and also some other alternative ways of doing models and other alternative approaches that are also, or new things that are also being considered in land use transportation planning process. So, in lecture 56, we start with employment location choice and real estate development location choice models. So, as we have discussed earlier, we have discussed about residential location choice, but there we have considered employment location choice as exogenous, but here we will develop a employment location choice model, and along with that we will also look into real estate development location choice as well. So, these are the two things which we have taken as exogenous in our 4-stage model, but now we also, because we are looking into some alternative models, we are also considering them as parts of the entire land use transportation modeling process. So, in travel behavior research domain, we have discussed earlier that there are many choices an individual makes. Some are long term choices, some are medium term choices, some are short term choices, and some of these long term choices are like residential locations and workplace locations. Now, workplace location means a person can choose his work considering that his location, he is residing somewhere, or he could jointly choose his location of work and place of stay together, and so on. And medium term choices, certain things like vehicle ownership, I will buy a car, so it's, and I will keep a car for maybe 5 years or even more than that. So, that is a medium term choice. And then finally, there is short term choice, like what mode should I choose for a particular tour or a trip, or rather what time of the day should I go for that particular trip or tour. So, that time of the day choice is also a short term choice. So, these are the different kinds of choices that we make, and households and individuals tend to make many choices simultaneously, and it varies across time periods as well. And so, many researchers have developed frameworks or models which consider different choices jointly, and it includes both observed and unobserved effects of individual decision process. And this we have looked into in earlier lectures also. We have looked into joint models. For example, residential location choice model was jointly decided along with intention to move. Location choice as well as intent to move was jointly thought of. Similarly, residential location choice could be also jointly thought of as with car ownership, or with workplace location, or with real estate prices as well. So, these are the different things that could be jointly modeled. So, when we talk about a joint model of residential location choice and employment location choice, so we usually we can either assume residential location choice model or without considering the work location choice jointly, that is work location is exogenous, or we can or that was the same concept which was also considered by Allen in Allensu's monocentric model. Workplace location is exogenous, and then based on that we were determining residential location choice. But Lindemann and Graves in 1983, they said that work and residential location choices are interrelated decisions, and then Gordon and Wickerman in 1982 said that individuals make workplace decision conditional on predetermined residential location and vice versa. However, these decisions on work and residential locations are not taken simultaneously. So, that means each depend on each other, but both could be dependent on each other, but these are not taken simultaneously. So, in a multimodal city, that means multinodal city, where the amount of work locations and residential locations are all spread out and intermixed, and the degree to which work locations are dispersed determines if these two decisions are interrelated. That means, if there are lots of job opportunities in every areas, then people may choose a location and job simultaneously, or their location may be chosen based on residential location may be chosen based on jobs, or vice versa. So, all these decisions, the more is the spread, more is the chance that there is a chance this decision would be taken jointly. So, in addition to that, these decisions also depend on household characteristics such as socio-economic status of the household, individual relationships within the household, ethnicity of the household, and also it depends on the tenure of for what they are looking for, means what kind of tenure choice they are looking for, that also may choose their influence their residential location and employment location. So, this all could be jointly modeled as well. So, these are some of the variables that we use in location choice models. Either employment and workplace location, we can consider these variables. For example, in household income, size, the number of children, number of seniors, number of automobiles, and then automobiles could be also defined like no automobiles, or workers, more workers are more than car, and more adults than cars, and all this way we can also define the number of automobiles in a house. And then person characteristics along with household characteristics, such as if the worker is working full time or part time, what is his occupation, what is he a driver, what is his gender, what is he a telecommuter, all this actually determines his workplace location choice. Similarly, land use characteristics also play a lot of roles. For example, employment density by type, household density, mixed, if the area is mixed use, then what is the parking density? Parking density decides how many people will be able to go there and park their vehicles, and intersection density, agglomeration and competition effects. If you remember from accessibility lectures, we talked about agglomeration and competition effects, like what is the demand for jobs in that particular area from surrounding zones and so on. Then comes accessibility, like distance or distance decay functions, or mode choice log sum, mode destination log sums. These are the different ways we can also include accessibility in the model for workplace location choice. That means, I will choose to locate where choose a workplace location where accessibility is higher. In addition to all this, there could be interaction variables among all the different terms. So, these are the different variables which influences location choice, and this could be location choice could be determined by both individually or jointly. That also we will look into. So, spatial resolution for this kind of models, it could be zone based, or it could be micro zone based, or it could be parcel based, and it is form of a destination choice model. So, employment workplace location choice could be also looked at in form of a destination choice model. That means, where they go for work. And in addition to that, we also need to be careful that is it work from home, is it are this individuals telecommuters, or is it a standard office, and accordingly for each one of them we have to determine location choice. If it is work from home, of course residential choice and location choice is same. If it is telecommuters, that means they are able to telecommute, that will also influence his decision to choose certain locations. Or if it is a standard office location, that means he goes to office and it is primarily in a CBD area, or area where there is a lot of other commercial offices and so on. So, in addition to that, we can also match workers which with their jobs. That means, certain groups of people could only go to certain kinds of job. So, location choice alternatives could be only as per those jobs for which we are matching the location choices. So, in this way also we can develop workplace location choice models. So, let us discuss an example. This is a study by Waddell. This is a famous study where employment location choice was modeled, and this was done for workers employed full time and lived in either Dallas, Texas in US, people who were living in Dallas or Tarrant County in US, of course. And in this, this is a joint model of residential location, work location and tenure choice. So, this is a joint model, and this has been done in 3 ways. In the first one, it developed as a multinomial model, logic choice model, where suppose I have got 3 location choices and residential location choices and 2 work location choices and 2 tenure choices. So, total options are 3 into 2 into 2. So, that is 12 alternatives are there. So, if I am proposing a multinomial model, so there could be 12 alternatives, or there could be different combinations of location, residential location, work location and tenure, and these 3 together makes one alternative. And so, the first model was developed in this particular form, where workplace, tenure and residence is jointly modeled, but this has been jointly modeled as individual alternatives. So, that is why we end up with 12 alternatives. So, if you can understand, in a very big city, this kind of model becomes very, very difficult. So, we will have around suppose 500 TAZs. So, 500 TAZs for residential location, 500 TAZs for work location, or maybe 300 TAZs for work location, which are mixed and commercial TAZs, and then tenure type could be even 2 to 3 type or even more. So, that we will end up with so much alternatives. So, that becomes difficult to model. So, this is the first model. So, where the utility of total utility of workplace W, housing tenure T and residence location is taken as UWTR, and it is a function of systemic utility of workplace alternative W, then systemic utility of residential location R, and systemic utility of tenure choice T. And then it is systemic component of utility specific to combinations or interaction between W and T, T and R, and then R and W, and then between all 3 of them, this is WTR. So, we have heard about, we have done interaction terms earlier. So, this is where both the characteristics actually are multiplied with each other, and then we create a joint term. So, that actually gives us an idea about if certain groups are related with certain groups in a more elaborate way. So, that is what we will that is why we introduce this interaction terms. Then EWTR is basically the random component that is also in the model. So, this is the systemic part, this is the random part. So, obviously, when we develop our logic, we use the systemic part, and this is when. So, that means we would have attributes for VW, VR, VT and all the interaction terms in our utility model. So, this is the joint model. Similarly, we could also form nested models. So, the first model, like we could do something like a 3-level nested model of workplace, tenure and residence. So, this actually is should be considered as for every. So, we have options of different workplaces W1, W2, W3 and so on, and for each workplace there is a chance to have 2 tenures T1 and T2. For each workplace we can have then a subnest of T1 and T2, and for each subnest of T1 we can have different residential choices. So, these are 3 steps, we can say, or 3 nests, where this is, we can say PNWTR, that is probability of person N of choosing WTR, that is this work, tenure and residential choice, joint choice, is based on probability of R, residential location given tenure and work location, into probability of tenure given work location into probability of work location. So, this is how we are going to establish a 3-level nested model. So, this is my different nest. For each one of these work locations we can have choice of tenures, and these are subnest, and within each of this tenure we can have choice of residences. So, that is our R1, R2, R3. So, similarly for T2 we have got R1, R2, R3, and for each W we will have T1 and T2 and then for each one we will have work location choices. So, then we have that we know how to estimate this kind of nested logic models. So, we have done that earlier. So, some are conditional and marginal choices, and accordingly we will estimate each one of them, and we will ultimately we can determine probability of each alternative in this particular way by creating this nest. Similarly, we can have a two-level nested model where we can have work location choice as the first nest, and in the other we can have a model where we jointly establish the joint model between tenure and residential choice. So, T1 R1, T2 T1 R, and then T2 R1 to T2 R. In this way, all the combinations are considered, and this becomes my different options of residences and tenure locations and tenure choices, and this actually is as a subnest for each of my work choices. For each work choice, this could be my tenure and residence choices, or for this suppose this is the higher level nest and this is the lower level nest. For each of this higher level nest, we have probabilities for, we can estimate probabilities for the lower level nest, and from there this will contribute to the probabilities of the higher level nest. So, overall we can determine the joint probability between work and the different tenure and this residence type. So, these are three ways we can jointly do this kind of models. So, that from this particular model, we need to understand how we can develop this. From this particular example, we can understand how we can develop these joint models. Now, let us just look at some of the parameters that has been used in this model. For workplace characteristics, the parameters are related with travel time. So, travel time in minutes from workplace to CBD, from workplace to CBD squared to increase the effect of that, workplace to fourth ward CBD, because they were working on two areas. Then they did they also considered characteristics of the workplace in terms of unskilled workers available and total number of, they did some job matching also, total unskilled jobs, low skilled worker with low skilled job, and skilled worker with total skilled jobs, and then high skilled worker with high skilled jobs, unskilled worker dummy times average wage into skilled job, and then this kind of interactions variables were created. And then also what kind of demographic characteristics, like the ethnicity was also considered, like unskilled worker dummy into times into number of black unskilled workers, and then skilled workers dummy into number of times black skilled low skilled workers, and so on. So, ethnicity is brought in, then job matching sort of is brought in, and then again time is a standard variable which also could be looked at. Housing tenure variables like housing ownership, alternative specific intercept for this particular owner, income of worker if household house owner, age of worker if of homeowner, and then one if household is family with children and worker is homeowner. So, some variables have been used like interaction variables in this way. If household is of a certain kind, age of worker is of a certain kind. So, these are basically not exactly housing tenure, these are some of the characteristics of that particular household. And then residential characteristics were like travel time from residence to the CBDs, then travel time to share of regional total rental amount of housing supply, total age of housing unit, these are housing characteristics, percentage of housing units boarded up means dilapidated housing, then population density in residence zones, so employment density, percentage of Hispanic population, so characteristics of that zone for that residential area, income of worker times percentage of black population, income of worker times into percentage of Hispanic, so ethnicity again, and age of workers, then non-family status of worker dummy, family status of worker dummy. So, all these variables are created for residential characteristics. So, there are residential characteristics which influence residential choice, there are worker attributes characteristics, workplace attributes which influence workplace choice, and then there are household characteristics which influence housing tenure. So, these are the different parameters that were used in the model, but the idea that comes from this model is we can jointly model different decisions, and there are different ways we can do that. So, either we can go for different levels of nested models, or we can create a straightforward joint model where we combine different alternatives, and then we can do a simple MNL as well. So, this is how we can do joint modeling. So, that is the take home from this particular lecture. Next, we will look into real estate development. Real estate development model represents the decision making process concerning investment in a real estate market, and what it means is where would people, real estate developers, or where would people try to buy real estate or construct real estate or invest in real estate. So, this is what real estate development model is. This actually determines that what kind of supply would be there in the forthcoming periods. For example, if a person decides to construct or build a particular real estate, that means it would be available in the housing market maybe after a couple of years once the construction is done. So, in a simulation process, when we are doing land use transportation simulation, real estate development model is one component, and once we determine real estate locations for a particular area and the quantum of it, this becomes available supply which could be location alternatives for residential location choice in a future time period. So, standard economic theory, so real estate development model represents the decision making process concerning investment in a real estate market, and standard economic theory considers a perfect competitive market, but real estate housing market violates all the assumptions of perfectly competitive market. Why? Because housing market is very heterogeneous in nature, and there are many reasons for it. There is very little number of buyers and sellers, and each one of them are heterogeneous, have different characteristics. Then there are specific properties of each property, that is specific attributes of each property. That means each housing project is different. That also influences decision making process. Then the market is segmented into many smaller regional zonal markets. That means each has got its own dynamics, own characteristics. Then government interventions, like this is a sector where governments intervenes, and government sometimes provides certain kind of housing, sometimes government gives subsidies for certain kinds of housing, sometimes government fixed prices for certain kinds of housing. Then the macroeconomic environment like loan rates and all these things play a big role. So, that is why this market is bit heterogeneous, and people also do not have complete information. Sometimes they have imperfect information about our real estate prices or about a particular housing area, and there are barriers to entry from both demand side as well as the supply side, and there is also the speculative nature of the market. That means people buy land or decides to construct in an area where they speculate that this area will grow, or there would be new investment coming into that area, or new infrastructure coming into that area. So, the speculative nature also makes it difficult to do predictions and so on. And in addition, there are also local interventions from different other perspectives as well. So, that is why housing market is very heterogeneous, and it is very difficult to ascertain where new developments will come. Plus, there are several actors in the real estate market. For example, there are real estate companies, there are small owners who make real estate decisions, then there are management companies of real estate funds who decide to invest in a particular location, and they will fund those companies who construct there, and that actually also leads to development over in those areas. Then there are user owners, and then there are tenants. So, these are the different people who has some role to play in the real estate market, and because actors operate in different sub markets, which increases the heterogeneity in investment decisions, each actor chooses a location for investment based on, like a real estate company chooses a location for investment based on perceived attractiveness in that specific sub market. So, that means his decision choice or his location choice or his utility maximization would be related to that particular sub market only. If I want to use that in a different area, we may end up with wrong results. So, residential location choice and real estate development location model are interrelated. So, locations should be favorable for investors as well as for houses looking for places to settle. So, this is something which is fundamental for residential or housing projects. So, what it means is whichever areas people feel to be comfortable to move to, or which is as part of the residential location choice attributes which are important in a person's residential location choice are also important for real estate developers or any investor to also chooses locations for investment. So, location choice for investment decisions depend on several location attributes which are economic, environmental, social, institutional, as well as it depends on the physical characteristics of that particular area or that particular location. So, let us see an example. Like in this particular example, a decision support system for real estate investment choice by Vincenzo del Guidi and et al. And this was done for the city of Naples, and they did it in 4 steps. The first step was to identify a general list of attributes or characteristics which play a role in the location choice, such as from different other literature this list was created, and then there was a evaluation of this list to determine which are the relevant and important attributes. That was done through analytical hierarchy process, and there was a questionnaire in regards to that. We have already discussed analytical hierarchy process earlier, and we see that these are the different parameters that were considered, like price, present market value in euros per meter square, dwelling size, conservation state, style, environment, accessibility, socioeconomic context, environmental quality, belongings, and so on. Belongings means sense of belongings to a place associated with identity of the place. Environmental quality looks into level of pollution, presence of green areas, and so on. Socioeconomic context, quality of life, safety, health. So, accessibility is proximity to schools, workplaces. So, there are several parameters which could be considered, and this actually also gives you an idea about what are the parameters you can consider while developing a real estate investment choice model. And if you look into this particular process, first you have a larger list of parameters. You can do a HP among the real estate developers. You can survey some of them. You can ask them which parameters do influence their investment decisions, and this investment decisions are by multiple actors that also I have told you. You can survey big companies, you can survey certain real estate funds, you can survey smaller companies, you can even ask some people who are willing to construct their own houses. All these things you can, all these people you can ask, and then ask them about what are the things that they prioritize, and that could be done using HP, or it could be done using any kind of method which determine the importance of those parameters. Once that was done, then a stated choice survey was conducted, a stated preference experiment was conducted, and as you understand that we have discussed during our SP experiments that we have done earlier, that we cannot have many parameters over there, we can only have a few parameters over there, because it is very difficult for a person to evaluate alternatives which has got many attributes, because a person cannot make meaningful choices out of them. So, if I give like 3, 4 or even 5 attributes and give different variations of values for those attributes, and we can ask the person to choose out of those different alternatives, a person will be comfortably choosing those. So, usually the results of HP questionnaire actually reduces the total number of parameters that we need to evaluate, and we can further reduce those parameters and take the ones which are very highly ranked from those particular questionnaire, and then use it in our stated preference survey. And based on the stated so this is another sort of reduction of the number of parameters, and then based on the experiment this particular stated preference survey of real estate developers or investors, we can determine that actual parameters which actually play a role in the decision making process. So, this is one method that you can directly take this particular list of attributes. Then what you can do, you can survey the existing locations of housing, new housing projects that have come up in an area for the last 10 years, 5 years, and then you can compare the characteristics of each of these areas using this particular set of variables, and then we can run a multinomial logit model on location choice, or we can do a regression model, and that also we can determine that which are the parameters which have been important important for decision influences in for a company to choose a particular location, or in aggregated scale in each zone which are the characteristics that influences more investment. So, both ways we can do that. So, just to show you an example, this particular example that we were discussing, just to look in expand to elaborate on that. So, this is the results of HP, where several groups of attributes were studied, like within this group accessibility, socioeconomic context, environmental quality, sense of belonging. These are different attributes of locational characteristics. So, these are the ranks 1, 2, 3, 4. So, then there was attributes related with the style, the environment, the dwelling size, price for that particular area, and then there were characteristics of real estate, characteristics of context. So, some other macro attributes were also there. So, in this research, this particular research, these were the parameters which were further considered for doing a SP survey, where accessibility, socioeconomic context and environmental quality was taken. Sense of belonging was not taken because it was the last rank. So, only the first 3 ranks were chosen, and then several levels were determined for accessibility: 5 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes. Then socioeconomic context, safety of low level, middle level, high level, and environmental quality, presence of green. This was also 3 levels were considered. These were made into a SP experiment, and that was answered by different developers, investors, and from there regression model, multinomial logit model was developed, and it showed that with increase in accessibility there is positive beta value, and this is the increase in the total attractiveness, or in the location choice, probability of a location being selected for investment decisions. Socioeconomic context is safety is low to high. These are the scale. So, when safety is reduces, then it obviously it shows a negative sign. That means the location choice becomes less attractive, and environmental quality improves, then it becomes more attractive. So, this is a method. So, similar methods could be also applied, but we can use this actually gives the framework of evaluating location choices in general. And this for when we are looking into location choices for investment decisions, the parameter choice is mostly related with residential location choice, in addition to certain other parameters which actually influences investors to invest in a particular location. So, we could have used, as I discussed, we could have used RP data as well, and RP data, if we have used that, in that case we need to have a lot of data regarding the developments that have happened in the last few years, and characteristics which were, and all the different characteristics that needs to be evaluated for each of those developments, that also needs to be gathered. So, it is a cumbersome process, but that would have given a more more broader as well as more robust evaluation of which are the parameters which is influencing investment decision in that particular housing market. So, these are some of the references you can consider. And to conclude, both employment and workplace location choice and real estate development location choice are intrinsically connected with residential location choice in an urban area. Joint models for employment and residential location choice can be developed as per different employment categories and tenure in the Indian context. That means, for some people residence is exogenous, workplace is exogenous, based on that residences are chosen. For some people residence is fixed, and accordingly workplace is chosen. So, it depends on what kind of job, it depends on the income group and so on. So, that actually it depends on the employment categories. So, that could be, we can have separate models for each one of them. Then real estate development location choice models for an urban area can also be developed from observed choices of development that has happened in an area, along with urban growth pattern and trends, and by exploring the proposed infrastructure and other development projects. So, it is not only about existing choices that has happened, but we also need to understand the trends and patterns of growth for that particular area, and also proposed infrastructure and development projects that actually will also influence the location choice for real estate development. And future real estate redevelopment projects and particularly commercial projects are, however, difficult to predict and is connected with government policies and demand. So, future real estate redevelopment projects, so that means certain brownfield areas are redeveloped, and also like for example, prediction of where new shopping malls will come. This actually is difficult compared to housing location choices, and this has to be this depends on many of the local government's policies, and like policies on redevelopment, what sort of benefits the real estate developers will get, and this actually influences real estate location choices.